Dionysus, TD, how much of the type of speakers do you have in your system predicates whether you should have a pre-pro over receiver? In other words, recommend amplifier power. I mean, if you have some nice speakers, I would try to throw as much power into them as you can afford. So,
yeah, the impedance and the sensitivity of the speakers are probably going to drive whether or not you need a dedicated amplifier for it. And if you want one, that's a little bit separate. But if you actually need one, then that's up to those specs of the speakers, because some AVRs just can't drive certain, can't handle a certain load.
Well,
some can handle 4 and some can't. Oh,
yeah. I had
Vivid Audio.
I had a friend email me, and they said that they had I think it was an AVR, or no, it was an amplifier, and he said he was cranking it like really loud, a demo for a friend, and the amplifier shut off, and he's like, "Holy crap, what just happened?" And it was an Emotiva, it was like an XPA 5, a lot of power, right? But the speakers that he was driving were 4-ohm speakers. And so when it really was cranking, more than likely, what would you think? They dipped down to 2 ohms during low frequencies, maybe?
Possible. Yeah, if he's got to run a full range.
So they basically said, our amplifiers aren't stable down to 2 ohms. So like you said, the impedance load of that amplifier, of the speaker, is going to maybe to dictate, what type of amplifier, or if you need an amplifier.
Right. Yeah.
I would also add the size of your room and your expectations of how loud you want to play it. And if you're crossing them over at 80 hertz too, makes it
a lot of variables.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I could see the case for somebody just wanting to get a separate amplifier just because. That's completely fine. But whether or not you need one is kind of that depends on when you start talking about the load, the output level that you want to try to get to, those kind of things.
And then how the output level at your listening position. If it's further, then you're probably going to want something, with more power. If your speaker sensitivity is like 85, dB, like ELAC. Damn ELACs. This one guy commented, I think a few days ago, he's like, I have these ELACs and like this receiver just really, like I can't get enough, like I can't get it loud enough. I was like, oh, because they're 85 dB sensitive. So you might need a more powerful AVR, or go to a power amp with some sort of, receiver with pre-outs, or honestly, like, pre-pros are pretty expensive, especially, there's some newer ones coming out on the market that are,
more budget friendly.
Yes. But for the most part, pre-pro is pretty expensive.
So I have a question. I know I've asked this before, but like if you cross over some inefficient speakers, let's say some ELACs at 80 hertz, right? So I'm not gonna let them play too much bass.
Right.
How loud would you expect to be able to play those? Let's say with a typical AVR, 3600H, something like that. Where let's say it's 100 watts, realistically. But you're crossing it over 80 hertz.
Are you talking about just 2 speakers, or are we driving 5 speakers, 7 speakers? That's going to determine too.
Let's say they're all let's say 5 speakers are all the same.
So you got 5.
My question is more like, usually distortion happens in the bass region, right? You turn it up, for bottoms out, distortion. But there's also such thing as distortion for the tweeter, or maybe even the crossover, which I don't know if a lot of people experience that. What would you hear if there was if you're overloading, let's say the crossover or the tweeter? I guess the tweeter would just blow up, no?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you overload a crossover, Aaron?
You can. Yeah, you can fry them, but I've never seen that done like in typical use. I think more likely. So there's that thing about distortion is you don't notice it until you notice it, right? Like I know you guys know what I'm talking about too, because you turn it up and it sounds like stuff just like really congested and just nasty grating sound. You're like, oh, that's So you start backing off it, but that's where you start playing around with the crossover.